Daniel Voss was 11 steps from the revolving door of his own company's headquarters at 9:47 p.m. The temperature outside sitting at 19 degrees Fahrenheit when a small voice stopped him cold. "Sir, my baby sister is freezing. Can you help us?" A boy no older than 7, jacket zipped over a toddler bundled awkwardly against his chest, stood under the building's awning. Daniel didn't hesitate. He shrugged off his $2,400 wool overcoat and wrapped it around both children in one motion, then did the thing that would matter far more than the coat ever could. He pulled out his phone and dialed emergency services before he asked the boy a single question. Daniel, 46, was CEO of Halstead Freight Systems, a logistics company he'd taken from $40 million to $1.3 billion in annual revenue across 14 years. He'd also sat on the board of a regional child welfare nonprofit for 6 years, a role that had taught him bluntly that a well-meaning stranger improvising a rescue could do real harm, delaying medical care, complicating custody, or creating legal jeopardy for a family already in crisis. Whatever came next, Daniel understood it needed to run through the right channels, not just his own good intentions. Paramedics arrived within 8 minutes. The toddler, 14-month-old Nora, was showing early signs of mild hypothermia, alert but lethargic, body temperature at 95.8 degrees Fahrenheit, and was transported immediately for observation. Her brother, Eli, 7, was physically stable but wouldn't stop talking, a rapid, anxious stream of information paramedics recognized as a child, trying to make sure the adults understood everything before anyone decided he wasn't being taken seriously. Chapter 4. The Mother Nobody Could Find. Yet Eli's account, relayed to responding officers, was that his mother had collapsed on the sidewalk 3 blocks away roughly 40 minutes earlier, and that a stranger had called an ambulance for her, while Eli, panicking, had grabbed Nora from her stroller and walked toward the only lit building he could see, believing, correctly as it turned out, that somewhere with lights on, this late meant somewhere with people who could help. At County General, Daniel's contact on the Child Welfare Board confirmed what officers suspected. A woman matching Eli's description had been admitted 35 minutes earlier for severe hypoglycemia, collapsing from a blood sugar crash tied to type 1 diabetes she'd been unable to consistently manage since losing employer-sponsored insurance 5 months earlier. Her name was Priya Kapoor, 29, and within the hour, hospital and Child Protective Services staff confirmed she was stable, conscious, and frantically asking for her children before she'd even finished her first round of treatment. Reviewing the intake paperwork alongside the caseworker, present because Halstead's nonprofit partnership gave Daniel limited, authorized visibility into the case, Daniel felt something cold settle in his chest that had nothing to do with the weather. Priya Kapoor had worked in Halstead's logistics coordination department for 4 years until a restructuring Daniel had personally approved 18 months earlier eliminated 340 positions company-wide, hers among them, in a cost-cutting decision the board had called necessary and Daniel had privately called the worst call of his career. Priya's severance had included 8 weeks' pay and 60 days of continued health coverage, standard, compliant, and, as Daniel now understood, sitting in a hospital hallway, nowhere near enough for a single mother managing a chronic condition while job hunting in a market that took her, according to her own later account, 11 months to fully re-enter. By month 3 post-layoff, she'd let her insulin prescription lapse twice, rationing doses in ways her endocrinologist would have flagged as dangerous had she been able to afford the follow-up appointments to say so. Priya lost her apartment 6 weeks before the night Daniel found her children after falling $3,200 behind on rent, less than what Daniel personally spent annually on his corner office's flowers, a comparison that would gut him privately days later. She'd been staying in an extended stay motel with the last of her savings, working a temporary data entry contract that paid $16 an hour, walking her children to a nearby shelter's evening meal program when her blood sugar crashed on the sidewalk. Contrary to any instinct, Daniel had to simply take the children somewhere, warm, and sort out paperwork later. The caseworker, Denise Argueta, walked him through the actual process. Eli and Nora were placed that same night with a state-certified emergency foster family 4 blocks from the hospital, a placement designed to last no longer than 72 hours, while Priya's medical condition stabilized and her case was formally reviewed, not an improvised arrangement, but a system built imperfectly to prevent exactly the kind of harm a well-intentioned stranger might otherwise cause. Priya's discharge was delayed 2 additional days when her care team discovered a secondary complication, diabetic ketoacidosis triggered by the prolonged rationing, requiring closer monitoring than initially expected. For those extra 48 hours, Eli asked Denise the same question every few hours, whether his mother knew he'd done the right thing, grabbing his sister instead of waiting. Denise made sure each time that the answer reached Priya's hospital room before it reached Daniel's inbox. Daniel didn't write Priya a personal check, a gesture his own board later confirmed he seriously considered and ultimately rejected as insufficient. Instead, he brought her case, anonymized initially, then with her permission, specific, to Halstead's board 9 days later, alongside data he'd requested from HR. Of the 340 employees laid off in the prior restructuring, 22% had reported involuntary exit surveys, losing health coverage within 90 days, a figure the board had never been shown broken out this way before. Within 3 months, Halstead implemented a restructuring severance overhaul. 6 months of continued health coverage instead of 60 days, a $4,000 transition stipend for employees managing documented chronic conditions, and a partnership with the same child welfare nonprofit Daniel served on, funding $600,000 annually in emergency family stabilization grants for laid-off employees facing housing or medical crises within a year of separation. Priya declined Daniel's initial offer to rehire her directly, telling him plainly that she didn't want her family's crisis to become the reason she got her job back. She wanted to be hired, if at all, on the same footing as any other qualified applicant. She reapplied through Halstead's standard process. 5 months later, was hired into a senior coordinator role at a salary 18% higher than her previous position, and negotiated the offer herself without mentioning the sidewalk once. Eli, now 8, kept the wool coat. Daniel insisted, despite its cost, that it belonged to the family that had needed it, not the man who could easily buy another. Nora, too young to remember the cold, has grown up hearing the story secondhand, framed by her mother not as a rescue, but as evidence of what her brother did before any adult arrived. He made a decision, at 7 years old, that experts twice his age might have frozen over deciding. Daniel could have taken 2 frightened children home that night and told himself it was compassion. Instead, he made a call, stood in a cold hallway for hours, and let a system built by people who understood far more than he did about family separation and reunification do its slow, unglamorous work. The lesson isn't that one coat, one CEO, or one grand gesture saved a family. It's that the most meaningful help sometimes looks like restraint, choosing to be useful within the systems built to protect the vulnerable, rather than becoming, however well-meaning, one more well-dressed stranger making decisions that were never his to make alone.